Amy Morgan, the feature writer with the Marriage Initiative. I'm delighted today to introduce you to Debbie and Steve Wilson, founders of Marriage Matters Now. This couple has served in ministry for 30 years, the last 18 of which has been speaking full-time at conferences strengthening marriages. Their book, 8 Mosquitoes That Drain the Life Out of Marriage and Relationships, helps couples learn how little things like busyness and lack of communication can wear down a marriage. The Wilsons offer experience, safety, and confidentiality for couples, missionaries, and ministry leaders seeking support in their own work and marriages. Steve and Debbie, thank you so much for being here.
It is a privilege to be with you, Amy. Thank you.
Oh, well, we're just so glad and so eager to get started. You are very transparent with your own journey that became the catalyst for your ministry. Could you share a little bit? I'm sure our marriage champions would like to kind of know who you are and your story so they can get to know you.
Like what you said, I was on staff of churches for 30 years. And literally 18 years ago, I resigned, and we travel and teach marriage conferences all over the world. Literally last week, we were in Honduras. And we have a passion for marriages that are healthy and Jesus marriages, but at a 12-year mark, we kind of hit the wall.
We did. I say all the time that if I could go back and look, there's no doubt when we got married, we jumped into ministry, not into marriage.
Yeah.
And what happened is we just invested everything that we had into ministry. And we just assumed that our marriage would just survive okay, because if we loved each other and we love the Lord, hey, that equals to happily ever after.
It's going to be perfect.
Well, and that was some time ago. It's 45 years now?
That's right.
And there weren't the resources around that there are now. Just kind of figure it out.
That's right. And nobody talked about it. And so I think that's part of the reason that it took us 12 years before we addressed it, because, no one ever talked about marriage struggles and problems back then. So I thought we were the only ones.
And nobody talked about it, especially if you're on staff of a church.
True.
Because you got to have it together and you got to be right and all the time and an awesome marriage and I'm the best and just couldn't be, just had to be.
We had to be perfect.
Could not be transparent enough. We had to put the mask on and fake it some.
Yeah. Well, and that, I know that's one of your areas that you really try to offer, that safe place to others like our marriage champions and church pastors. And I do want to talk about that, but I want to hear a little bit more about where you got to where you are now, because you didn't just jump from 12 to 45 years. You had to do some work.
Yeah.
We really did. And probably the beginning of the work was trying to understand why I responded and reacted to certain things. Whenever you're not happy or when you're not dealing with past hurts, the easiest thing to do is to blame. And so it was easier to blame Steve that he wasn't meeting my needs, that he wasn't a good husband, whatever. But bottom line, when we started delving into it, we had to realize that I had a lot of wounds that I brought into the marriage. And there were certain things that Steve would say or do that triggered those wounds. And that's what my reaction was. So we had to start doing a lot of talking.
Yeah.
We had to get really safe with each other so that we could be transparent and vulnerable. Once we did, the hurts began to emerge.
Yeah, we had to become safe enough where we both didn't become defensive.
That's right.
And that's when the wounds started coming out and
then healing.
Yeah.
Healing started. And if you ever walk through difficulties with someone, you just love them more deeply. And so I think the reason we are where we are today is because we got messy with one another and acknowledged where it was coming from and extended grace and forgiveness to one another. And there's no one I want to be with more than him.
That's such a sweet and lovely, and I'm sure there's all of us did a collective, wow, that, right? Isn't that what we all were?
But Debbie didn't tell you, there were a lot of times I was a jerk. And I just had to come to reality of going, okay, why do I act like that? And that's where we got to some healing points for me to be real as a man, to go, okay, I don't feel that. And then when we started digging, I thought, you know what, those are feelings there as a man, and it's not a weakness, but it's a strength to be able to share those and go and walk there with her.
You all had something, it was a quote about helping your spouse heal the hurts that you didn't cause. Could you say that again? Because it was so beautiful. And you,
the greatest privilege, and it's a privilege once you connect, the greatest privilege in marriage is I get to help. Jesus does the healing, but I get to help heal hurts in Debbie that I did not cause before marriage. But the freedom of the healing of that allowed us to have a better marriage, a depth of a marriage that we would have never gone to if we had not hit the wall at the 12-year mark.
So true.
that is just so beautiful. And it's just the maturity and the wisdom, because I could hear some people saying, well, I didn't do that. That was from her family or whatever. But you were like, no, I want to help heal the things I didn't cause.
Yeah. I think that's, when you say I do,
Huge.
for better, for worse, I think that's part of that better or worse. Because I don't think when we say I do, we know what's coming or we know what's truly inside of each other. And so, that's why I think the Lord extended such grace and mercy to us, as he wants us to learn to do that with each other.
And neither one of us knew the baggage we were walking down the aisle with when we got married.
No, we didn't.
Well, I love her and she loves me and everything. Jesus loves us. Everything's awesome. Well, there's a whole truckload of baggage outside that we both brought into this. And we get to walk there to go, okay, that does not have to become baggage. That does not have to be a little thing that becomes big. And it's just
We diffused it.
Yeah, we just put a needle in the balloon and let the little stay little.
Yeah. I know that and then too, once you deal with it, it's not passed down to your children. I know my husband and I are like, if our kids could just leave with, a little attaché case instead of a semi truck, wouldn't that be, such a good goal?
They say that we don't want our inheritance to be for counseling.
That's just a great statement.
Unless they're paying Steve, because you are a licensed counselor. So, because out of your work together, you said there weren't that many resources back then. You turned to the Lord, and then Steve, you did go back and get your degree in counseling. Correct?
I did. I went back and got my master's in marriage and family counseling, and just to have that validation of being on staff of a church for 30 years, but also having that degree just speaks
It gave you more
volumes.
credibility. To do what we do.
Well, and that's again too, as you're talking about credibility, you said as you started speaking and doing some conferences, you started teaching a premarital class and then being asked to speak. You said having that staff experience on a church really gives you credit. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I thought that's an important distinction about you guys in your ministry. Yeah,
for 16 years I was a youth minister, so I know that closet in the church ministry that we do. And then for the last 14, I did married adults, and was never the senior pastor, but was in some pretty good sized churches where I had the freedom to just really impact the congregation.
He was a great leader, and he poured a lot of worth and value into the people that served underneath him at the church. And so I think Steve and I both understand the difficulties that staff and wives deal with, and that it's a lonely position. Many times, you can only talk to each other about things that are going on at the church. And also, I think a lot of people put staff up on a pedestal, and that's not who they are. And so Steve brings a realness and a vulnerability as to, it's hard, and it's hard on a marriage, and it's hard on a family. And so just the reason that he understands that and can validate that, I think gives him a great opportunity to minister to ministers.
Well, it's a great foundation for our ministry now, for us to do marriage conferences. And it's not just me standing up and talking. It's us as a team saying, okay, here's here's our vulnerability. Here's our open book. Some couples while they're after a conference or something, they'll come up to us and go, "Okay, y'all have lived in our house," and it's authentic enough to go, "What you see is what you get," and if we don't put all the cookies on the table, it's not going to be as rich as it needs to be as a husband and wife standing up and going.
Well, look at the blessing that men hear from a man's perspective and women hear from a woman's perspective. 30 years ago when Steve and I went to a couple of marriage things, it was a man that talked. And I always thought, well, I'd sure like to hear her side of the story.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. You would feel like there was just something missing.
Because there is another side of the story.
Well, and two, another thing that you mentioned, just again, because you're on staff, a pastor, that other pastors feel safe bringing you to their church. They know you're not going to go off on some crazy tangent, down the road there, that you're going to stay in the lane of the Jesus lane. And
yeah, everything that we teach is very biblically based. I mean, we know that we don't want to do it without the Lord.
Yeah.
So why would we neglect God's word? That's where the true instruction is.
Well, and knowing that I have my master's in marriage and family psychology, I could give you a whole lot of psychological babble that will get you to change your behavior for about a month or 6 weeks after the conference. But that all goes away. But if we give you biblical truths and Jesus transforms your heart, that is for eternity. Mm-hmm. We have done conferences and we've got done, and the pastor said, "Okay, I thought I had you come for our people, but little did I know that I had you come to my church for my wife and I." And literally that pastor is still a pastor. He's happily married because he allowed the Lord to speak into him.
Well, and that's, again, we've kind of danced around it, but let's go there now. You really offer we're hearing so many pastors and their wives, church staff, they feel that aloneness. They feel like, I've heard missionaries too. They almost can't admit that there's a crack in their marriage or that they're struggling. You counsel people. Let's talk about that, because you have our marriage champions. I'm sure there's someone right now who really needs to find you, that you would offer that safety and confidentiality and wisdom that they need.
Yeah.
Well,
I think our story alone just pulls them in, because I think they can so relate to the fact that, I said at that point at the 12-year mark, I think I'd rather be lonely and alone than to be lonely next to Steve.
That's right.
And I know.
And I was on staff of the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of ministers and their wives get to that place because they just only have leftovers to give each other, because they're giving and giving and giving.
Right.
And so I think right there, when they hear our story, it makes them want to open up and be honest about where they are. Plus, Steve and I, there's not a judgment bead in our body. Mm-hmm. We love people for who they are, and we just totally want to help. We want to be an encourager. We want to give them hope. And I think that's our heartbeat. When we first realized God wanted to use us, that was our very first passion, was, okay, God, use us with other staff and their wives, because they have no one to turn to. And God has used us now for 25 years in a lot of different areas. We just ministered to 22 missionary couples.
Tell us about that. I'd love to hear this, because those are the people that need you so much. And this was through your Marriage Matters Now, correct? Your
Yes.
Those couples are American couples that have their own ministry in Honduras. They have their own identity, their own organization down there. They kill it during the summer. At the end of the summer, there's a missionary that hosts it. That's kind of hard to say. He pulls it together, and these 20 some couples come together, and it's just a time for us to love on them and wash their feet, literally, and allow the Lord.
And we just do a full conference for them, and they just eat it up.
Literally, we do a conference and we get done, and they're going, "Okay, what else you got?" All we got's time, and we end up doing a conference and a half. It's a full Friday, Saturday, Sunday conference.
But you know, when we leave them on Sunday, you can see in their faces that they have hope once again, that they have the resources they need to keep on, because so many times they're just burnt out.
Right.
And we just give them the opportunity not only to pour into them, but we give them that individual time to process what they've heard and how to apply it to their marriage as quickly as they can.
Right.
So it's just powerful. It's a joy.
And you've done that too. I remember you talked about a pastor's conference you went to, and people reached out to you, Steve, just even confidentially. You mentor some young men too.
I do. I've got some staff members, staff guys, 4 or 5 of those that nobody has a clue they're talking to me. And we talk on the phone in my office, and it's just one of those times where it's refreshing for them to come to a pastor that talk to a guy that has been on staff of a church and knows what it's like to be on staff, and then to be able to be confident and going, okay, here's where I am. And for me to give them hope and know that their marriage is very important. I tell guys all the time, if you lose your marriage, you lose your ministry, and you need to get plugged into your marriage and make sure it's where it needs to be.
He's not only a mentor, but a lot of times he is a father figure. And they feel safe with him. And like I said, the confidentiality is priceless when it comes to staff members.
And you said a lot of these guys haven't seen a marriage. Their parents aren't still married, and they don't even know what it looks like. And you'll call them to the table if they're doing one of those, can I dare say, man things? That's
Yeah, they don't have a father, but they also don't have a father figure that's been in ministry. Some of these younger guys have never been around a older staff person to go, to just get into their face with love and compassion going, you did what? Why did you not go to that visit at the hospital when a main man in your ministry was having surgery? Well, that's 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, yes, it is. And you're going to be there at 6:30. So, it's just one of those deals where you go, and it wasn't condemnation. It was
never thought
about that. I didn't know I was supposed to. I said, that's what I tell the guys all the time. I think this is a great statement. What you do Monday to Saturday gives you the privilege and the honor to stand up on Sunday. And the right to stand up on Sunday. Yeah. It's not your Sunday morning show that you do that gives you the right to do the rest of the week. It's the week before gives you the validation and the honor to stand up and share the gospel.
And, I credit this to the fact that in our early years of ministry, we had pastors that were much older than us, and they would have us in their home all the time. Amazing. We would sit on their floor. We would eat with them. We would watch them parent. And I'm telling you, we saw the value in that. So why would we not want to do that for others? Right.
Well, along the way, you have learned some things that you've turned into your great context. I don't want to forget, we talked about you have such a wonderful personal, like you said, a mentoring opportunity for our marriage champions to find you, but you also have some physical resources. So let's talk about these mosquitoes. We all love mosquitoes. So let's talk about.
We were in Louisiana and Shreveport.
I know the name is kind of deceiving at times, but the reason
everybody knows about mosquitoes
is if you ever get a mosquito in your house, it's small, you can't always see it, but before you know it, it's biting everybody in the house. So these 8 things are very common things that will bite most marriages. We've never done a conference that someone came up to us and said, we don't have that mosquito. I think all 8 of them, everyone experiences. So let me tell you what they are real quick. Busyness, one of the biggest mosquitoes we had to deal with, which also led to irritability. Is anybody irritable in your house?
Anybody in your house have a temper? Let's talk about that. Yeah.
And then we talk about the thought life, how powerful the mind is. We talk about drifting apart. Every marriage drifts. What do you got to do when that happens?
And not just one time. They drift
multiple times. It can happen multiple times. Yeah. Money, how we deal with finances can be a huge mosquito. No accountability in your marriage. If you aren't walking alongside other people to hold you accountable, you're going to fall.
With the internet and all that stuff, you've got to have some boundaries there that says, you know what, we can't go. We're not doing that.
Yeah. And then the seventh one is broken sexual intimacy, which I believe all marriages struggle with, even if it's just the years that you're raising babies, but how it affects your marriage. And so Steve and I talk about the 4 seasons of sexual intimacy. We get pretty personal on that one.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, the inability to forgive, because so many marriages are stuck in unforgiveness and holding grudges and scorekeeping. And so we walk through that. So that's what this one's about. It's a workbook because we wanted couples to do some digging. So there's 5 chapters on all of those 8 subjects. Right. Okay. And then we wrote communication, because that was really our next step in our marriage as we tried to heal our own marriages. We had to learn to communicate at a much deeper level. And that's where we talk about getting safe enough that we get real and vulnerable, and we help heal hurts in our spouse we never caused.
We talk about 6 levels of communication, and most couples never get past level 3.
Wow.
Yeah. And we talk about,
it leads to an emotionally connected marriage. That's the reward. That's the prize.
Huge.
What is level 3?
Opinions. If you cannot value each other's opinions and differences, you'll go back to level 1 and 2.
And valuing that is, honey, feel free to have an opinion, but when you want the right one, I got it. That's not a good thing to do.
Oh, so how do you do that?
Conflict. We talk about conflict in that level, because if you don't ever feel like you're valued in your thoughts, your comments, your opinions, then, one person just feels less than the other.
Yeah.
And
one becomes dominant.
Yeah. And it becomes obvious in the way that you deal with conflict. Right. So we walk through that whole thing. Once you can get through level 3, level 4, 5, and 6 is the reward. And it's where every marriage wants to get.
Yep.
What is level 4?
Level number 4 is how to deal with each other's feelings.
Ooh.
Like the only feeling we tend to deal with and tolerate is anger. But there's a lot more about the heart that we need to learn to deal with. We even talk about that we're not comfortable with tears. When people cry, our attitude is, I need you to hurry up and get over this. You're making me uncomfortable.
And anytime somebody cries, you hand them a tissue.
Wipe it up.
That says to you, stop crying. Well, let them cry. Don't hand them a tissue. Don't be rude about it.
We feel like God knew what he was doing, that if we would let our tears go, the natural place they fall on is the heart.
Water keeps things soft.
So it's just such a great conference, a great book.
Yep.
Such a great book.
And they could also, that's one of your conference titles as well. That way.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We have 4 conferences that we teach. So the first one is on the 8 mosquitoes. The second one is on communication. The third one is from the book of Philippians, A New Way to Love, which I just love Paul's words to the church of Philippi. Yeah. They're just so good. And then the last one is an intentional marriage, the 10 things every spouse needs.
Yes, we talked about that. And I was asking you, what are the 10 things every spouse?
It's so hard for me to tell them. I like to keep it a secret.
Well, just give us a couple. You don't have to share all the beans.
The first one is to value your spouse. Your spouse definitely needs to feel like they're important to you. I feel like we tend to deem importance to everything out in the world except each other. Yeah. So we talk about, the way you look at each other, the way you talk to each other, the way you handle each other. It's just a sweet one. Another one is your spouse needs your shoulder, not just your mouth, which I love that one.
That one is, guys, she doesn't want you to fix her all the time. Just let her talk. And if you don't know what else to say, ask a question like, tell me why you're feeling that. Well, when you ask that, she'll talk some more. And 99% of the times when the women are allowed to talk, they will solve their own problems. And men, she thinks you're the best in the world.
He's the hero.
That just rings so true. Being married myself for 28 years, we've learned to work through those things. And I've learned to say, I just need to talk about it. Yeah, I'm not done talking about it.
Yeah, so true.
I will say to Deb, okay, random thoughts for 400.
He does.
And she'll go, I'll go.
I'll say, okay, I'm ready.
That means it's not coming from anywhere with reason. I have a thought that I need to get out right now, and I don't want you to fix it or tell
Just
me.
listen.
Just don't tell me I'm not smart right here. Just listen. And she'll go, okay.
I'm ready.
Yeah. And I tell her, we'll talk about it. And I'll go, okay, I'm gone. Thank you. Oh, that's all I needed.
Steve, you must be one of the rare men that's an external processor like me.
He can be.
I can.
He really can be.
Yeah.
But I think it's because we've learned the value of it.
You know what? We've done the work so hard. Some of our personality traits have swapped.
They have.
Which is
really?
Yeah. I cry. Deb and I cry at the opening of Circle K's. I mean, that just, we're emotional, and it's safe to go, oh, we're safe to go there,
I love that. Well, and one of the sweetest stories that you told me recently, you were all doing a conference close to, was it at your home church or somewhere close in town? It was close in town.
Mm-hmm.
And tell who participated.
We live closest to our daughter. We have 3 children, and our daughter and son-in-law and two of our grandchildren live half a mile from us.
Yeah.
So I guess it's one of the greatest joys, and another major affirmation to what we do is our kids love to come hear us, even if they've heard us over and over. And so we taught at this church for 5 Wednesday nights for an hour and a half. And one of the ministers sat in the back every week.
Yeah, the executive pastor.
Yeah. And so when it was over with, he walked up to us and he said, man, y'all's content, the way you share your hearts was just powerful. But he said, but I got to tell you what was the most powerful thing to me. He said, I sat back here and watched your daughter and son-in-law cry over points that I know they've heard you make over and over, but it still touches their hearts just like it touches yours. And I thought, that's a stamp of affirmation that what we do is not just in front of an audience.
Right.
It's the way we live our lives every single day. And our children absolutely give us credibility because they adore us. Yeah. And I mean, what more could you ask for?
That is exactly what more could you, there is no greater joy.
There is no greater
joy. Know that your children are walking in the truth and that they are looking at you and that you are leaving a legacy for them that is worthy of emulating.
So true. So
talk about tears. You got me there.
You can cry with us, Amy, anytime.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't have any daughters-in-law or grandchildren yet, but man, that to be able to say something like that is quite a legacy.
It is. We are grateful.
Oh, well, I don't even know what to say after that.
Come back into a senior adult pastor that invested his time in us. He said, when we were having children, he said, what kind of legacy do you want to leave your children? And I said, well, here's some things we want to establish with our children when, we're gone and they remember us. And he goes, well, you need to start that today.
Like live what you want to leave.
Yeah. I thought, you know what? That's exactly what we've done. Not egotistical, but we're going, you know what we have taught, what we have spoken is what we've lived.
Well, and it shines all over your face.
Oh.
So marriage champions, if you would like to find Marriage Matters Now and connect with Steve and Debbie, which how would you not after this wonderful discovery of all that they do, you can always find us at marriageinitiative.org.